Night Earth Day, a day to celebrate the earth. And we're going to see how our food choices can impact the earth. So before we get started, I want to give you a little test on a couple things. So, and you might already have some of the answers, so let me go down here. Okay, fresh poultry. Does anybody know what fresh poultry means?
I think it means that it's not frozen.
Okay, that it's not frozen. Fresh means that it's whole or cuts that have never been below 26 degrees Fahrenheit, which is absolutely ridiculous because isn't 32 degrees freezing? So, but it's technically considered fresh. Now, frozen poultry is 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So, we have some definitions in this country about our food that are absolutely ridiculous and things that you guys really need to know about. So, let's get started. As I said, today is Earth Day. And this is kind of a little cartoon that I think really depicts what's going on in our world, not just in our country, but in our world. So who's playing with your food? There's a lot of governmental agencies that are playing with your food. So in what year was it? 97, President Clinton announces this great program where he wants to ensure that there's food safety. And he had designated, different secretaries of different cabinets to look at what's going on with our food and to ensure food safety. So all of this sounds great, right? And this was back in 97. He proposed $43.2 million for this early detection. So let's look at where our money has gone. So we've got 6 agencies. We've got the CDC, we have the FDA, we have the EPA, we have agencies I've never heard of, all designed to work together to protect our food. But the big question, especially after doing all this research, is do they respect you and do they respect your food? You'll find out that they don't. What they respect is they respect the big companies, the lobbyists that fund them. And that's where they get the money from, so that's who they're going to pander to, not to us. So these agencies, what they do is they monitor food outbreaks. And an outbreak is considered when there's 2 or more people that have a foodborne illness that they can trace back to one source. So that's what's considered an outbreak. So they trace the outbreaks. Well, that's a little bit after the fact, in my opinion. But how do they get contaminants in the food in the first place? Well, as you'll see in these little, I think they're penguins, in this little cartoon, one of them asks about arsenic in chicken. And actually, they do feed chicken arsenic because what it does is it makes the meat a nice tender pink color. It looks healthy. So it's all about appearances. It's not about your health, and it's not about the health of the animal. So again, how do contaminants get into the food? So there's a whole food chain. Right now we are so disconnected from the food, and many school children don't even recognize vegetables. They don't recognize where chicken comes from. They don't realize the chicken nugget comes from an actual chicken. Well, there's food production, and there's food processing, there's distribution, and then there's preparation. So at any step along the way is where your food can get contaminated with pathogens. So let's look at the factory farm. This is a picture of a chicken factory farm. And what most chickens are raised like this. I think it's over 9 billion chickens a year the U.S. produces. So this is an industrial factory farm, and the chickens are placed in these small cages and they're lined up. And there's been a big move in the country and even in California that they see that this is abusive to the chicken and it's not healthy either. So what we've done a couple years ago, I don't know if any of you remember Proposition 2 that we all voted in. Proposition 2 allowed for chickens to have room for their wings to span, and it gave them rooms. So that's like the free range and free roaming chickens. However, it has, even though it's been enacted, it doesn't become effective until 2015. But as you can see, these conditions are not here to promote your health or the chicken's health. This is promoting the health of the pockets of the big companies, big agri. And these are chickens that I don't want to have. Now, in factory farming, there's absolutely not one redeeming characteristic in a factory farm. There's nothing good that comes out of them. There's waste, and the waste poses a severe health risk to the workers, but even to us as consumers, as we'll see. The workers there's over 100% turnover rate in the workers of factory farms. So it's very detrimental to the workers, their psyche, but also to their health. As you can see here, 25% of workers at a pig factory have respiratory issues. If they get sick from working in a factory farm, can you imagine those pigs? And then those are the pigs that are slaughtered and put on our dinner tables, for a nice, beautiful Easter ham. I mean, we need to get connected to what's going on with our food and realize what's going on so that we can make a difference. And the manure and the urine, they're stored in these big, huge manure lagoons is what they call them. And this is all designed to promote the profits of the companies. So we have to talk about a few unpleasant things, but these are things that you need to know, because if we're not aware, there's no way we can make a change. And we can make a change. I have solutions at the end, so don't get too discouraged, because some of the stuff is going to be really gross. So they have these lagoons, and they're huge, massive lagoons, and it's all waste. And it's not just the urine and the manure. It is all sorts of afterbirth waste, and all sorts of waste goes in these pits, and they're not secure. They're always leaking. They're open air, and if it rains or if there's flooding, it gets all into our waterways. So the contamination just keeps on going and going and going. This is a picture of a manure lagoon, and the National Institute of Occupational Safety says it's a leading cause of death in the workplace. I mean, this is horrific. These are horrible conditions. And what the companies like to do is they like to hire people that are undocumented, or people that they think that they can pay, cheap labor, number one, but also these people aren't going to make a big stink if they get hurt or if they get in trouble. So they're horrific. This is a picture of a manure lagoon. Now this I got actually off of Google. So this is an actual picture that you can actually Google it yourself if you like. If you see all these little squares up above, those little squares are the pens for the cattle. And if you see all those little dots are cattle. So this is massive, and it's open air. So what happens is we don't want to waste things, and we can't really just dump this stuff like, in a waterway, in a river. So in their infinite wisdom, they've decided, look, what we can do with this is we can spray it on the crops. And so they spray it on our crops. And that's how, when you hear about salmonella outbreaks and things like that, it's not because the spinach or the crop has pathogens. It's because they spray the crops with this filth, and then it stays in the crop. So the USDA, they acknowledge that it contaminates the water supply. They acknowledge that it causes harmful gas to be emitted into the air. Now, remember I said Clinton authorized these people, these agencies, to look into what's going on? USDA was one of those agencies. So they're looking into what's going on. They acknowledge what's going on, but they don't do anything about it. So the EPA, they say that the emissions have increased by 50% in the last few years. And it is horrible. They also acknowledge that most of the antibiotics and the hormones and things that are fed to the animals, while they're growing, they also acknowledge that a lot of that is just excreted out of the animal. So that goes into the manure lagoon, and then it gets sprayed upon our produce. So this is another reason why I'm such a big proponent of organic. I mean, you'll hear me talk about organic all the time. And there's so many reasons for it, but this is a huge reason, because I don't want this crap on my organic tomatoes and lettuce and produce. Now, here's another lagoon, and the pink is actual color. This is not anything that's been dyed in any way, but this is because it's from the blood and stillborn little pigs, and it reacts with the bacteria. So this is an actual picture of the actual color of the lagoon. Now, communities in the farming states, they know how horrible this is. They know how detrimental it is, and they know that it affects them. And the waste and the off-gassing from these pits, it affects the entire community. It doesn't affect just this small little area, and it doesn't affect just the crops that it's sprayed on. It affects the entire community. And a 2003 study showed that the people in these farming communities would rather have a prison in their backyard than a factory pig farm. So they'd rather have a solid waste landfill. They'd rather have a sewage treatment plant. I mean, this is like bottom of the rung. Nobody wants this in their backyard, because they know how detrimental it is, and they know that the disease that it produces. So one of the things it says is that it causes neurobehavioral problems and mental illness. Now that's pretty huge, what's going on in these rural communities. And the big farms, they're companies. They're not people. They're not family farmers. They don't care about the individual. They don't care about the community. They don't care about the health. They care about making money, and they care about keeping this stuff hidden. There's a law that came into effect that it's an anti-terrorism law, where they're making it a crime for somebody to go onto a factory farm and take photos. And it's under the guise of anti-terrorism. It's basically the big companies lobbying because they don't want you to know what's going on with your food. So there's so many diseases that are caused by foodborne illnesses. And if you look at the pyramid, down at the bottom, this is exposure, and then the person becomes ill, they seek treatment, and all the way up, it's only that top little portion that gets reported to the CDC. So what they believe is that there's at least 38 cases additional of foodborne illness for every one that's reported. And some of these diseases are listeria and salmonella and E. coli. And so according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, they realize that salmonella, it's from animal sources. So they're the ones that are saying this. This is all information that's known. Campylobacter. This is another pathogen, and this one, what they believe, is from the feces during slaughter. So it's from the animal. It's an animal source. So with chicken, what used to be the law is they'd have a slaughtering plant, and the chickens would come through on the slaughtering plant, and if they were contaminated, if there was feces, that bird was contaminated. Well, there was a lot of birds that were contaminated, and that's a lot of waste. We can't have that. So what they did, and this was like decades ago, is they said, oh, you know what, don't worry about it. The feces now, all it is, it's a cosmetic blemish. Don't worry about it. And they did this so that they could speed up the plant. Well, the Consumer Reports, what they did is a study on chicken, and they took chicken from all over the country, from different stores, and they tested it for bacteria and pathogens. 97% were positive. Now this includes organic. So just staying organic is not going to protect you from these pathogens. The other thing that happened, President Obama, in his infinite wisdom, he decided, hey, we're slaughtering over 9 billion chickens. We need to speed this up. We need to make this whole process quicker. So what he did is he says, I'm going to speed up the process. So instead of 140 birds per minute, that's like insane. It's 175 birds per minute. Now, the other thing that he did, which is really scary, is we used to have inspectors in these plants. And the inspectors, first of all, no inspector is going to be able to look at 140 birds per minute. That's ridiculous. But now he says, oh, no, let's take the inspectors out of the plant, and we will trust the food producer. We'll trust the producer to tell us and to make sure that the plant is clean and sanitary and running efficiently. So that's all to save a little bit of money, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, they're playing with our health. So why isn't our food safe? If I haven't told you enough. Okay, so here's something that I found out that just made my jaw drop. I was just astounded. A couple things. One, back in 1910, okay, people talk, oh, I need my protein, and I need chicken because it's lean, and all these things that the chicken industry has told us. It's not really based in science. The chicken industry has told us this. But back in 1910, I think people were a lot healthier than now. 1910, we didn't have all these degenerative diseases. They would have chicken, Sunday dinner. That was like a special occasion. And people would raise chickens for the eggs, and having chicken, like chicken meat, that was kind of like a little, side benefit of having the chicken. They weren't raising the chickens for the chicken meat. The other thing is in 1900, the average chicken laid 83 eggs. Well, in 2000, over 300 eggs. So these are different chickens. The factory chickens, and a couple other things that you guys need to know, just because this is such a huge industry, and I don't want to focus the talk on the brutality of the chicken, but I think it's something that we need to know. The chickens, what they do when they're allowed to just be a chicken is they forage, and they run around the grass, and they pick little bugs and little things, and they forage. Well, their beak is very, very sensitive, and they use that as they forage. Well, in these tight conditions, the chickens, they can't handle it. It's causes a lot of stress on the chicken, and so they start pecking at each other. So in order to prevent that, what they do is they just snip off the beak, and they don't use anesthesia. So it's not like, cutting a fingernail off. This is a highly sensitive organ that the chickens use, in their natural environment. So they're fed unnatural food. They're fed antibiotics, and they know, CDC, FDA, USDA, they know that all of this leads to chronic disease and obesity and drug-resistant bacteria. And that's one of the biggest things to take away from this, is that it's producing strains of drug-resistant bacteria. And that's what's, really scary. We have such an overuse of antibiotics in the world, but in our country. The other thing is that these chickens cannot reproduce. Chickens and turkeys. Almost every turkey out there that you get is a product of artificial insemination. And one of the hallmarks of health is being able to reproduce. So it's really, really important to look at what is this chicken that's on your dinner plate. So as I said, the chicken now it's an industrial chicken. It's not the same chicken that existed in 1910. So if you look at this, the picture on the top is the chicken breast is too massive. And they're growing, they breed them this way. This is not a chicken that's been fed hormones to cause them to balloon up. This is a chicken that's been bred to grow this way. So when they grow this way, their bones are weak and their cardiovascular system is weak. So it's a sickly chicken. So we're breeding sickly chickens and we're feeding it to our children. We're feeding that to the masses. And there's two types of chickens, the broiler and the layer. And so the broiler is the one that you see there on top that can't even stand up because it doesn't have the strength in the bones to stand up. And the layer are the hens that now produce, 300 eggs a year. It's a completely different chicken. There's about 3 dozen types of chicken, different species of chicken, that are on the verge of extinction because of this. Back in 1910, people would grow different types of chickens for their geographical area. So the chicken can live outside if it got cold, or the chicken could live here in California. But there's this diversity and this variety of chickens. And now the broilers, they're slaughtered at 42 days. So even if you go to the store and you get an organic chicken, you're getting an industrial chicken. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about solutions here, but you're getting a deformed chicken. So these chickens, think of having a child grow to the age of 10 and being like 300 pounds, of pure fat. That's kind of the same analogy here. These chickens are growing so quickly and their bodies can't support the quick growth. Let's see. Okay, we're going to talk just a little bit about hogs. We talked about them before. Hogs, they are brutal with hogs. Pigs are not allowed to be pigs. And pigs are one of the most intelligent farm animals, and a very intelligent animal. They have been known to be able to open up the gate and escape out. So they're really intelligent. They're very sensitive creatures. They're actually very, very clean creatures. And they do not like to be in a confined area where they're going to the bathroom. They want to, like most of us, we want to have the bathroom over there and we want to be able to sleep in a nice, comfortable bed. Well, that's what a pig naturally does. And in the factory farms, that's not the way it is. They are confined in a small space that barely contains them, and that's where they spend their entire life. And there's very, very poor sanitation. So going back to the CDC, there was the virus, it's a flu virus, H5N1 virus. And this was a virus that CDC said crossed over from poultry. And there's this guy from CDC, Robert Webster. What he said is that it was because the chickens weren't being vaccinated. Or either the vaccination, it wasn't a high enough dose, or there was something wrong with it. But I want to read this to you because it really struck me, because this is their mindset. This is what the CDC is proposing with that $42 million, which that budget has been raised since '97, but proposing to protect us from foodborne illnesses. He says, if you use a good vaccine, you can prevent the transmission within poultry to humans. But if they've been using vaccines, why is there so much bird flu? Either there's not enough vaccine being used, or there's substandard vaccine being used, and probably both. I think there are substandard vaccines for influenza in poultry all over the world. So, what's the logical conclusion? Let's increase vaccinations. And they're very helpful. They give a lot of tips on how to vaccinate properly. And they realize that the vaccines, they're living disease-producing agents. So you got to handle them with care. It seems like they give a little bit more credence to the danger of vaccines with animals just in reading some of their little helpful tips than they do with humans. But okay, organic's better, right? Yeah? Nobody wants to answer that one. Okay, do you guys know what organic means? Organic means organic chicken. They have to be fed certified organic feed. That does not mean that it's something that's healthy for the chicken. It's just that it's organic feed. They have to be grown without the feed's grown without artificial fertilizers and pesticides. But this is from the time that they're 2 days old. So we'll get to the 2-day-old thing in a second here. But vaccinations are acceptable in organic meat. And it doesn't matter what kind of meat. If it's pork, if it's beef, if it's chicken, turkey, they're all vaccinated. And this is something that astounded me because I thought that organic, we were going to be able to escape, the animals being vaccinated, but not true. With organic eggs, what happens is they get these hatcheries, and they have all these eggs in there. And what they do is they'll put some antibiotics in the egg. And that actually causes the chicken to grow quicker. But it's also an antibiotic in that egg. Well, then they can go give those eggs to organic farms. And so your organic chicken may not be truly organic from the time that it was in the egg. So we really need to watch what's going on here. There's one thing to look for if you're going to buy eggs. Look for raised without antibiotics. So if it has that label, raised without antibiotics, on the egg carton, then they should not have ever been injected with antibiotics when they were the chicken was in the egg. Okay, so free range. We hear a lot about free range, and we want free range chickens and free range eggs, right? Well, that's another thing. The government has these definitions, and they just get away with murder. It sounds great, right? I want a free range chicken. I want, free range eggs. This is a picture of a chicken farm where they're free range. So Free range means that they have access to the outside for at least half of their life. It doesn't matter that the outside is a little patch of concrete. It doesn't matter that they never go out there. They just have to have access to it. So we really need to get connected with where the food comes from. I like to shop at farmers market, and I talk to the different farmers, and I find out, where the egg's from. And the market I went to last week, the girls showed me pictures of the chickens just all running around. So they were like truly free-range chickens. So why isn't something being done about this? What they have said, the governmental agencies, 6 governmental agencies, that to maintain the health of the animal, we have to feed it hormones and we have to feed it antibiotics. It's ridiculous, but we're being treated that same way. That's the way our health is being treated. We go to the doctor and the doctor wants to give you an antibiotic or maybe a hormone cream or, some kind of medication. It's the whole philosophy. The FDA, the USDA, and the CDC, all of them testified in Congress that there's a definitive link between the routine non-therapeutic use of antibiotics and the crisis that we're having of these strains of bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. So again, we have what sounds great, Clinton saying we need to promote food safety. We have these people testifying that there's a definitive link. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I just don't understand how nothing is being done about this. And I think a lot of it is that we're kept in the dark. People don't know what's really going on with our food. And the AMA and the American Academy of Pediatrics, they also agree with this, that there's this definitive link. So the definitive link means, there's not a doubt about it. They know that there's that link. So we can see clearly that what is being fed to the animals has a direct impact on their health. And the farmers actually have this down to a science. They know what to feed that chicken to get it nice and fat and juicy and plump. Well, they know that there's this direct impact, but why aren't we, treated in the same way? There's a direct impact between the foods that we eat and our health and our weight and how we feel. So we need to start thinking about this. So what can you do? So here's the good news. Number 1, get back to the basics. Really get back to the earth. Where is your food coming from? Because your food all comes from the earth. And support your local farmer. And there's basics for health. We need sleep. We need clean air. The animals don't get clean air when they're on those factory farms. We need clean air. They need clean air, clean water, sunshine. If you're in a factory farm, you're not getting very much sunshine. You're locked up in there in some prison. You need proper nutrients. You need exercise. These are all things that are going to keep the animals healthy, and they're going to keep us healthy. And so we need to start thinking about this relationship that we have with the earth and with the animals and keep all of us healthy. Now, what I found was the Livestock Conservancy. And what these people are dedicated to is they're dedicated to real farming, like farming way back, in the 1900s, where you rotate the crops and you use the animals, because the animals played a role in farming. And they are also dedicated to bringing back the different species and the different breeds of chickens and turkeys and cattle that are on the verge of extinction. So that's what they're dedicated to. So a heritage turkey, you want to look for the name heritage. You're probably not going to find it at your local market. You're going to have to seek it out. It's not going to be at Whole Foods. It's not going to be at Mother's Market. Maybe if we demand these products, maybe they will show up there on the shelves. But there's certain things that they require, and one is they have to be able to reproduce on their own, and they have to have outdoor access to the outdoors and be raised like the animal should be raised. Let the turkey be a turkey and let the pig be a pig. So they grow a lot slower. So these animals and this meat is going to be a lot more expensive, but your health is worth it. So it's really important to start thinking in terms of long-term, I think, thinking in terms of what's going to heal the earth. Having these lagoon pits is not going to heal the earth in any way. It's just going to keep destroying the earth. It's like we're killing the earth. But having animals that are raised properly is going to heal the earth. We're going to be able to get topsoil back. We're going to be able to grow good soil for healthy vegetables and fruits. And hogs, they have heritage hogs, and they let the hog be a hog, and they let the hog eat the diet that the hog is supposed to eat. And these things are really important. If they know how to feed a pig, why aren't they telling us the same thing on our diets? Pigs have a certain diet that is conducive to health. Chickens have a certain diet that's conducive to their health. Well, humans, we have a certain diet that's conducive to our health, but we're not being told what that is. We're being told eat the Doritos and the fast food and all this crap. And you know what? You can take statins and you can keep eating all that crap. So there's a farmer that I found out about. Frank Reese is his name. He has the Good Shepherd Poultry Ranch, and you can go on his website and you can actually order turkeys, the heritage turkeys, and I believe he's got chickens as well. But this is a really good guy, because another thing that he does is he pays double to have his poultry slaughtered, because he wants the line slowed way down. He wants to make sure that they're slaughtered in a humane way, and that they're not going to be infected with, feces like the, regular poultry is. And so I always talk about let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. But we can also use this medicine, the food, to heal the earth. Coming back to the Earth Day, learning to farm and the husbandry practices, all of that is healing to the earth. And other cultures that farm this way know it, but it's being taken away even in different countries. We're pushing our industrial culture on other countries. And so eating, to me, it's like the most spiritual act you can do, because the food that you eat, it becomes you. It becomes your brain. It becomes your muscle. It becomes you. And it affects your emotions. It affects who you are as a person. And there's a direct connection between the physical and the spiritual. So learn the power of food. Learn to detoxify. Learn to use food as medicine. And these are all things that in my practice that I help people with this. And you can get a coupon from Lori. She's got coupons for me. And so I have two sides. I do have a practice where I'm a practitioner, and I help people get their diet on track and learn what nutritional needs they may have. But I'm also an attorney, and I want to invite you to look at a couple things on the flyer. You can get involved. Since this is Earth Day today, this is also Veg Week today. And there is a website that you can go on, and I urge everybody here, even though it's a day or two late, to start and give it a try this week. Become vegetarian for the week. The other thing that I do want to talk to you about very briefly is there is a new proposal that's coming out that we need to have our voice heard. The FDA is proposing that we can irradiate crustaceans. So what that means is shrimp and lobster and crayfish, all the crustaceans, that they can be irradiated because it is potentially it's there's a lot of bacteria on these fish or these crustaceans, because the way they're raised, they're being farm raised, and there's a lot of bacteria. So what they'll do is they'll irradiate it with radiation, which we'll have a talk on that another point, but they irradiate the food, and so then you have your nice beautiful shrimp with dead bacteria on it, and you can take it home and you can make your shrimp cocktail and whatever else you want. But if you go to my website, I have a blog that talks about it, and also on here there's a link where you can let the FDA know how you feel about your food being irradiated. There's a cutoff on that, and the cutoff is May 14th, I believe. You have to follow their directions on how you need to let your voice be heard. But go to wellnesslegalgroup.com and go to the blog page, and you'll see my blog about the FDA and crustaceans. Thank you.